Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we're going back to a deck that I've played a little bit already, which is the HELM'S DEEP deck, which is a mono-black combo deck that has the Helm of Obedience, Leyline of the Void, Doughty Voidwalker combo, as well as the Vampire Hexmage, Dark Depths combo. So either you can assemble the Dark Depths with Vampire Hexmage or Thespin Stage and make a 20/20, or you can assemble Helm of Obedience with either Leyline of the Void or Doughty Voidwalker and mill out their entire library. So this is a pretty clean deck list if you can see what's going on here. We've got lots of 4-ofs. Everything is a 4-of basically, which you don't see very often in Legacy. The only sort of way we've gone a little bit away from that is because you've got 2 Castle Lockthwains, but everything else pretty much is 4-ofs in this deck. The reason for that is because all these cards you want to see in your game. So you want to be able to have the most amount of combo pieces of all your combos to draw into, and then you want your reliable mana acceleration. Where this version differs is that we used to have an Urza's Saga package, but we rarely had enough time to spend mana on the Urza's Saga. So we've made our mana base a lot cleaner, and it's also given us a few more slots. We've been able to include these opposition agents, which is a really, really powerful thing to play out on turn 1. So we can either play the Ancient Tomb and Lotus Petal to get on turn 1, or the Dark Ritual. We also have the ability to accelerate out our Chalice of the Voids on turn 1, so we can make turn 1 Chalice for 1, which shuts off a lot of decks. So there's sort of prison elements going on here to sort of stifle what the opponent's trying to get done long enough for your combo to go off. It's relatively straightforward. A lot of mulligan decisions are important. You need to make sure you have a plan, but that's pretty much it, to be honest. When we look at the sideboard, again, it's very clean. 4 split-second edicts, because we need to kill stuff sometimes. Plague Engineers, 4-of, because there are a lot of guys out there like elves and goblins and such like, and even merfolk's been ticking up a little bit since they had a new lord. So you just want to have a guy that can sweep the low toughness stuff, and then you have the sudden edicts to hit the big toughness stuff. Hymns to Turak, if they're not playing to the board, you need to disrupt their hand instead. That's what these are for. And Court of Ambition, if your opponent's not playing creatures, Court of Ambition is just a 1-card win condition basically. It's going to draw you into all your other stuff, but then they're going to have to struggle to deal with you being the monarch. And this enchantment is going to either strip their hand or rip their life total apart quite quickly. So it's just a card that I really like, and I've found to be pretty good in the matchups where you actually want it. So that's pretty much it. So I think we're ready to just jump into a league and see how we go. But before we do that, if you wouldn't mind, how about scrolling down a little bit and hitting that subscribe button? That'd really help me out. All right, let's go on to the first round. So we're on the play for game 1, which is where we want to be. We have turn 0 Leyline of the Void. We don't have a turn 1 play, which is the only issue here. But we can play turn 2 Doughty Voidwalker into turn 3 Opposition Agent, which is fine. It's a case of how effective we think the Leyline of the Void is going to be. We probably can also pivot into the Chalice of the Void for 1 on turn 2. So I think we've got options here. It's quite a slow hand though, but it has the Opposition Agent, which is one of the things I wanted to test out in this deck. So I'm tempted to keep this one for science, even though it's a bit slow. So if our opponent is a Reanimator deck or a Delver deck, we've basically stripped away a lot of their ability to win the game by playing this out. So it completely stonewalls Reanimator and really slows down Delver. Okay, so they are a Delver deck, so this is good for us. This is always going to be a 1-1. So we can play this out. So we have a choice of playing the Chalice this turn around Days, or we can play the Doughty Voidwalker and then try and resolve the Chalice next turn around Days. The upside of Chalice is so high is the only issue. I think we will jam the Doughty Voidwalker and try and get the Chalice on the next turn around of Days. Okay, so this just resolved. That's good for us. So this will outrace a lot of their creatures. The only thing it won't outrace is the Delver, which has the same clock, but they didn't have a Delver, so... They do have main deck Brazen Borrowers for Leylines of the Void. Usually it's only the 1 though, so we should be able to lean on this relatively well. So where they have the Wasteland, under the previous version of this deck, they might have been able to take things out from underneath us, but they can't this turn. So what we can do here is, would we rather have a Thespin Stage or a Castle Lockthwain? Or we can play out the Ancient Tomb. I think we can play out the Ancient Tomb, that's the one we care least about right now. And then use this mana to cast a Chalice for 1. So this way we're playing around Days. Now they can wasteland us and then try and make us pay for the days. So if they go to wasteland our ancient tomb now, I think we do tap it. But I'd rather keep both of these because this is going to be what's going to draw us into more action, and this can just provide a win for us. So that's why I played it this way. This is the one I care least about dying. Okay, so this shuts off all their cantrips and their lightning bolts. Okay, so they have the main deck Brazen Borrower in their hand. That's unfortunate for us, but that unfortunately is the nature of things. Okay, they used it on the Chalice. That's interesting. So they could use this to try and mill away 1-drops, but the thing is they're going to have to cast 1-drops into the Chalice. So I think... Okay, so they just want to try and strip my creatures away from me. Okay, sure. So now we're probably in the market for playing out this Thespian stage and then flashing in the opposition agent when they go for a Flooded Strand crack. Or we can flash it in and catch the Dragon's Rage Channeler on attacks. So they should see this coming because we're not playing out the Chalice. So I have the Wasteland for the Thespian stage. What we can do, if they go to Wasteland this, we can make the Thespian stage copy a Swamp. So it's a basic, so the Wasteland's ability fizzles, but it still keeps the Thespian stage ability. But I can't really activate that until our opponent has the Wasteland up. They need to activate it first, so they kind of have to go before we go. Okay, so I think we cast this now, end of turn. So they have a counter spell, and they use it on this, they can't use it on the Chalice, which shuts down a lot more of their deck than the opposition agent. So they got 2 Unholy Heats, which means they might be the bigger version with the Ledger Shredders. They tend to run more Unholy Heats than the smaller version that runs Delver. Yeah, so there's the Wasteland. So we can play out the Castle Lockthorn here, or we can play out the Dark Depths so that we have the ability to Thespian stage next turn if we draw it. The only issue is if we play this out, we can't pay for a days. Because they're going to respond to Chalice to the Void in one way or another. So at least if I attack with this, at least I'm more likely to get the 3 damage in before I play my Chalice, because they won't know what I'm necessarily playing. They should suspect the Chalice. Just got the Lightning Bolt. Yeah, so that will go at this guy before combat anyway, if I play the Chalice. So I may as well try and get 3 damage in there. So again, we shut off their 1-drops and we shut off their graveyard. So they're looking at Ledger Shredder or more Dragon's Rage Channelers to win the game. Expressive Iteration. We're very much showcasing the prison side of this deck at the moment rather than the combo, but we're not many cards away from just being able to go off there. Lotus Petal. We play these out because we want to use the Castle Lockthorn to draw a card. There's no point drawing it now. 1, 2, 3. No, there's no point drawing it now. We may as well wait until our opponent's end of turn. Have to lose our Lotus Petal for this, but I think that's fine. Okay, a Dark Ritual that we can't cast. It's the only thing that gets shut off by our Chalice of the Void. Play this out. We don't really want to play out the Dark Depths because we'll lose our other Dark Depths. So it means we have to take 2 damage if we want to draw a card with Castle Lockthorn. 3 damage, sorry. So if our opponent draws a 3rd land and can play the Brazen Borrower, that can change the maths. At the moment, hitting us a 1 isn't really doing a great deal. Okay, I think it's worth drawing on the card here. Another Castle Lockthorn. Okay, so now we have the Thespian stage. We can make a 20/20. They have Wasteland, so it's better for us to do it now, because the only thing they have that can get rid of it is Brazen Borrower, the Petty Theft side of Brazen Borrower. Okay, so scrying here, or surveilling, sorry. How good is a indestructible 20/20? Very good, as it turns out. All right, so that was the case if I had enough pieces to lock out the Delver deck, and then eventually could draw something to win the game with. All right, onto the sideboard. So our graveyard pieces are very good here. Sudden Edict is also very good because they're not going to have a huge amount of creatures. They tend to just play 1 or 2 threats. So these are ways of killing the threat that can't be countered. So I like that a lot. We can't play Court of Ambition because they can play 1/1s and stuff. The Plague Engineer is fine here, but it's a case of, is it better than something like an opposition agent? I don't think it is. The Hymn to Torak again is also fine here, but I think we're just better off with how our deck is currently configured. So we just need to fit in these Sudden Edicts. So I think we can afford to play a slightly slower game here, but we don't want to strip out all of our ways of making the early chalice is the issue, because we need to try and get the chalice online quite early. But I think we can probably trim on single dark ritual, and we can trim some of our more expensive cards that might be hard to resolve, like the Helm of Obedience, trim back on an opposition agent. So these are better on the play than on the draw, so I think we just go with this configuration. The other option is to trim a Hex Mage and leave in an opposition agent. So we've got 3 and 3. I think that's probably good. We've got slightly less Helms, but I think we're more or less the control side of this matchup in a lot of ways, where we're just trying to prison them out and then kill the 1 or 2 threats they have and then lock out their spells. So we're going to submit like this. So this hand is very cold to Wasteland, incredibly cold to Wasteland. But we can make a turn 1 opposition agent to shut things off, and we can draw a Hex Mage to play our depths. It gives us 2 ley lines, so 1 Brazen Borrower won't be enough. So post-board actually having 2 ley lines is quite good. If we draw an Ancient Tomb, we can have turn 2 kill, or another Dark Ritual as a turn... Yeah, we can have a turn 1 kill with a Dark Ritual. I'm going to keep this because I have faith in the deck, because we've got so many mana sources in it. Okay, so they're not going to have a graveyard again. A Delver. So this doesn't care about the graveyard, so that's the best threat they can have. So we have Tomb of Yawgmoth here, so we can play this out. So if we Dark Ritual now, if they counter this with a Force of Will, then that's going to be basically their whole hand gone. Now if they counter this, then Wasteland me, then we're definitely in trouble, but we can still draw up to cast our Dark Depths plan. Okay, so there's the Force of Will, pitching a Brainstorm. So our opponent's down to 2 cards in hand, so let's just hope one of them isn't a Wasteland, because that would be very bad for us. Okay, it didn't flip, so they might have drawn a Wasteland. Okay, Flooded Strand, excellent. So we get a turn with more mana. So Vampire Hexmage off the top gives us a 20/20. It's not a Vampire Hexmage. Kind of an annoying amount of mana here. So we play out the Dark Depths, and then next turn we can play the Thespian Stage and make a 20/20. So obviously it's vulnerable to certain things. The Brazen Borrower. So they flipped, and they've got a Ponder in hand. Expressive Iteration. It's a good card. Okay, so there's the Wasteland. I assume it's going to hit our Dark Depths. No, they took the Urborg out. Interesting. Okay. So this turn we play out the Ancient Tomb, and next time we play the Thespian Stage out, and we can combo. Okay, so there's a Ponder we know about. I'm presumably looking for another Wasteland. They found another Wasteland. Okay. They should do this now rather than going to my turn, unless they want to do it in my upkeep. Okay, so now we have this, so they have to keep their Wasteland up. Bash me 3 here. Another Expressive Iteration. So we're just trying to draw the mana sources to cast the Helm of Obedience and kill that way because of the Wasteland. So an Urborg does it here. I'm tapping for a Ponder, sure. Okay, so Chalice of the Void. We have a basic Swamp. So if we play out the Helm now and they have a Force of Will, then our goose is cooked. I think we just have to pass a turn. So we can try and force action with the Thespian Stage now. Delver of Secrets, sure, that's fine. There's one less card in their hand. So because the thing that interacts with this isn't something that we really care about for trying to make the Helm, it's best just to go to our turn rather than force them to use the Wasteland. Okay, so this is awkward. So we've got what, 3 damage coming in there. So our Ancient Tomb is effectively shut off now because we didn't draw what we needed to draw there. We needed another black source to try and make this Hex Mage work. So if I guess we have to hope the Delver doesn't flip, is what our plan is, which is not a very good plan. Okay, so that flipped. So if we go to make the 2020 now, we're definitely dead because they'll just wasteland in response. So what we can do is hope they don't have a lightning bolt, and then go to our turn and hope we draw the mana for the Helm of Obedience kill and they don't have a counter spell. Okay, so they have the lightning bolt. We'll concede the game. Okay, so go back to the sideboard. I'm not unhappy with anything we had going on there. Like, we have the sudden edicts to deal with that situation. No, I like it as it is. I think we just need to get a bit more fortuitous. So on the play here, we can make a turn 1 Chalice, or we can make a turn 1 Opposition Agent, both of which are pretty good. So I think we'll play this out. Play this out. So we can play it now to try and get them if they have a fetch land and just ruin their turn. But this doesn't. This cares about the Force of Negation. This doesn't. So I think we probably do it in their upkeep, so we can get the Dark Ritual through a Force of Negation. Okay, so if they have any fetch lands, they are shut off. Okay, they have a Steam Vents and a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Okay, so this is good for us. Good attacks. This is for 1, and we have a daze that we can pay for. Okay, so they did have a Force of Negation that you played around in the first turn. So we got Brainstorm out of them. So we have the option of casting the Helm of Obedience as well, which is something we might be in the mood for. So that means if we draw a Doughty Voidwalker, we can just cast it and immediately go off. So we can do we have a Thespian Stage for the wasteland, so we can do the trick of copying if we want to. They should know that I can copy this into a swamp, so they shouldn't use the wasteland. But if my opponent makes a mistake, I'm able to capitalise on it. They might also tap their wasteland to help them cast something like a Ledger Shredder, although we have seen a Delver, so I'm less expecting a Ledger Shredder now. They're just a Delver build that's running multiple Unholy Heats. Feels like this game is slipping away from us a little bit. Okay, so cracking a Scalding Tarn now. Interesting. Okay, so we have a Sudden Edict. So if we play out the Urborg, we are inviting a Wasteland, but we need to get through the Wasteland eventually, so play this and we can Sudden Edict. And then if we have to, we can use the Lotus Petal to copy with a Thespian Stage. So this Sudden Edict is always going to kill the Dragon's Rage Channeler, so we may as well do it now. Oh, I skipped through that, didn't I? That was annoying. It just cost myself 3 damage there. And they're going to get another Surveil off of it because I pressed the wrong button to yield through the turn. Oops. Okay, so we need to draw another Sudden Edict for this guy. A Leyline of the Void. A little bit late, but I think we're going to put it out now. It gives us the win next turn if we draw a mana source or they don't wasteland us. That's what they got for us here. Expressive Iteration. That's a lot of cards I get to see. So we have double wasteland here. If they use them, that's pretty good for them. Okay, they didn't use them. Interesting. I assume they're going to have a counterspell for this. But I don't really have much choice but to try jamming here. So they could have a Brazen Borrower, and they could Petty Theft my Lane on the Void. Do I have a choice? I don't think I really do. Let's see if they got it or not. They do not have it, so looks like we've got the win here. 1, 2. This one can't get a red source. So if they did have a third lightning bolt, they needed to crack this. Right, so we managed to win with the Helm of Obedience there, the Gandalf riding to our rescue in Helm's Deep, hence part of the naming of the deck. Alright, because the whole point of this deck is that you can kind of pull wins out of nowhere just like this, really. Alright, on to round 2. Okay, so this is the next round, and we're on the play. This is our opening hand. It doesn't actually have a game plan, it just has Doughty Voidwalker on turn 1, which is fine against some decks, but I don't think it's particularly exciting what's going on here. So I think we're going to mulligan. This hand is a lot more exciting to me. I shut off the graveyard and I shut off 1-drops on the first turn. I have half of both of my combos then. The problem here is that we have double Dark Ritual, but we can put one of them on the bottom from the mulligan, so I think it works out. Okay, so we've stuck the Chalice. Okay, so they have conceded, which means that they're either Dredge or Reanimator. Those would be my assumptions, unless they're like, they could be Oops or Spells. It's hard to work out exactly what they are because they conceded so quickly. But they are a graveyard deck, would be my assumption. Now, does that mean we want to bring in any of these? So they're probably going to be boarding in stuff to blow up my leyline if they conceded to leyline that easily. So we may want some of these if there's some sort of Reanimator deck. Or we can just resubmit, since it was good enough to get the turn 1 concession in game 1, so why not try again? The only thing I might be tempted by is Sudden Edicts if they are a Reanimator deck, but we do have 8 anti-Reanimator cards here. And we can always just mill them out with Helm of Obedience or steal their own creatures with Helm of Obedience. So I think we're going to submit like this. Okay, so this is our opening hand for game 2. We have 2 draw steps to hit a black mana source, which gives us a 20/20. Or a Doughty Voidwalker if we think that's going to be more useful on that particular turn. So we're going to keep this. Now the question is, do we put both Leylines in? So if it's a Reanimator deck, they usually have Wear, Tear and Serenity. But because I have a Doughty Voidwalker, I'm going to put them both in, so I play around Wear, Tear, and hopefully I can play the Doughty Voidwalker before the Serenity is online. If I have more mana in my hand, I might be more inclined to play only one of the Leylines of the Void. So I could have played out a Dark Depths this turn and then had a Urborg for the second turn to make a 20/20, but I think this is fine as is. This turn we find out if they were worried about me shutting off 1-drops or if they were worried about me shutting off Chalice or off their graveyard. As it currently looks, I'm suspecting that it was probably the Chalice that was the bigger issue. So we did draw the Urborg here. So we're going to play this out, and we're going to play out the Doughty Voidwalker first, so we can play the Vampire Hexmage combo on the same turn, and we can also play it around potential days. Okay, there might just be a Delver deck again and they just had a handful of 1-drops. Okay, yeah, okay, this is looking more like Delver again. Sure. So we don't get to make the 20/20 this turn. Oh, maybe we do. Let's cast this. If it resolves, we make the 20/20 now because they are a expressive iteration. Yeah, because they're a Wasteland deck, we would make the 20/20 now to dodge the Wasteland. Even though they do have a Brazen Borrower in their deck, there's a lot less Brazen Borrowers than Wastelands, even though they've already used one. So there's Volcanic Island we know about. We've bricked on land this turn, which is a shame. We do have more information for potential game 3 because we now know that it was the Chalice that was probably causing them more trouble than the Leyline. Obviously the Leyline does really mess with them in terms of their threats because it means they can only win with Delver really. Because they can't ever cast Murktide. Dragon's Rage Channel is only ever a 1/1, which is not enough. Okay, so they have a 1/1, but this does help them find other cards. What does this achieve if we play it out? It means if we draw a Dark Ritual or another Ancient Tomb, we can just win on the following turn. So I think we play this out. So we're not going to just complete it past priorities to make them think about Opposition Agent. Okay, so I have a Wasteland here. Okay, so we have a Dark Depths, which isn't really the card we wanted there. It does mean when they Wasteland this in response to me making a black mana source to cast in the Hexmage, I can then just play another one to follow it up. Again, the clock is incredibly slow, so we have plenty of time. If we keep bricking on draws, it's not going to be so great. There's not many draws in our deck that are bad for us at this point. More Helms, more Leylines, more Dark Depths. I guess more Hexmage doesn't do very much either. Doughty Voidwalker. There's quite a few draws that aren't good, but like half of our deck is mana at this point. So we should be able to... If we hit a Lotus Petal, then we can cast the Hexmage, Wasteland in response, and I can play the second Depths. Our opponent has the ability to hard cast Force of Will now. Because they should have 5 red blue sources, 1 steam vents, 4 volcanic islands. But we just keep taking 1. Another Hexmage. That was one of the ones I was saying I didn't want to draw, so that's not ideal. So they're just trying to find things at the moment. Presumably a Delver's Secrets. That's the only way they can realistically increase the speed of their clock. Okay, so we're under double wasteland now. That is a bit of a problem. Okay, so we found a Lotus Petal. So we play that Lotus Petal now. So if we play out the Hexmage here, so this will get a wasteland from our opponent. They might counter this as well, just in case. Sure. So we got the Force of Will there. So now we don't really want to play this wasteland out. It does mean that Urborg, it means that if we draw Urborg, it's less good for us. But I think we have to hold this in case you draw something like a Lotus Petal or a Dark Ritual, so we can get these two in play at the same time. I think because we have 2 Hexmages, you want to try and put one into play before we play the Dark Depths. Obviously, if they waste out our Ancient Tomb, then we can just play out the Dark Depths and make our Urborg draws better. Okay, taking my 1. Okay, so the opposition agent here is something I can play. So I think we can hold this up and try and ambush them in combat, and possibly burn a Force of Will on them that they have. Alternatively, if they try and use one of their fetch lands, we can get them. At the very least, they should be cracking their fetch lands if they don't have a counterspell here. Days. Sure, I don't have the ability to pay for that, unfortunately. Okay, so we can play this one out. Play this one out. They don't get a chance to react between me playing this and playing the land. There's no triggers of going to stack. They won't get priority. Sure, they're going to daze me. Okay, so we have the Urborg now, but we only have 1 Vampire Hexmage. If we play out a Hexmage now, it's most likely to die, so we have to play out either the Urborg or the Dark Depths. Because we don't want to play the Vampire Hexmage this turn, I think we play out the Dark Depths this turn. It does allow them to wasteland us, but they've used 3 wastelands. We cannot block. Play this out. So we played the Urborg out there, we play around days. So that was probably a misstep from me there. Is this going to cost me? How many dazes have we seen? 1, 2, 3 dazes. I think we'll play this out into the days and hope they don't have a daze. If they do, then we can play Helm of Obedience. Okay, they had a Force of Will, so it didn't really matter which one I played there. So if we draw a Dark Ritual or a Lotus Petal, we can Helm of Obedience them next turn, because this will tap for black mana next turn. Okay, so that's all 4 of their wastelands. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, so that's all 4 of their wastelands. So I think we play this out. So next time we can make the Helm of Obedience, but we can't play around days. Again, they have used 3 dazes. Now I've seen half of their deck. So if this flips, we take 4 this turn, and we haven't seen Lightning Bolts yet, so I suspect they might have a flurry of Lightning Bolts that can kill us. Sure, so I'm dead on the next turn. Brainstorm. We do get to be on the play for the next game if this doesn't work out. Sure, another guy. 2 cards in hand. So we've drawn the card that lets us win the game this turn, if our spells resolve. If they have days, it's good enough as well. Brainstorm. So they don't have it immediately in hand. Okay, so we activate this now. They'd have to have 2 Brazen Borrowers or a Stifle here. Don't like the way this is going. You don't usually expect Stifles out of these decks. Okay, they're just milling over. So again, if both of the cards in there, how many Lightning Bolts? Okay, so they don't have 2 Lightning Bolts in hand. Excellent. So we managed to win that round. So that's 2-0 against Delver so far, and on to the next round. Okay, we're into another round. We've won the die roll, so we can make turn 1 Ancient Tomb into Chalice, but we kind of don't do anything from that point onwards. We need some black mana, so I think we have to mulligan. So this hand is just mana sources, so we don't think we can keep this either, so we have to mulligan again. Okay, so this hand looks alright to me. I think we keep this on 5. So we want the Leyline Helm combo, which means we also want the Ancient Tomb. We want the Urborg, because that gives us mana. I think we're better off binning these two, because that way if we draw a Dark Depths we can Thespian Stage, but we also just have a land for activating Helm, so I think we say done there. And hope we're playing Reanimation and get a free win, because our hand is a little bit slow here. So if we play out one of these, they can all get wastelanded, which is a problem. We don't want to lose our black mana, so I think we play out, because our Helm is our plan, I think we play out the stage first, because we'd rather not lose 2 mana on a wasteland exchange. Just another Delver? Sure, okay. Everyone's playing Delver today. This is bad for us, so we play this out, and this is a fine one for them to wasteland. Swamp is good for us, so we can play this out and we can use this to copy a swamp now, and that way they can't wasteland our Thespian Stage, they can only wasteland the land that we don't care if it gets wastelanded because we've got a backup. So we can cast Helm of Obedience and activate it next turn, but our opponent obviously hasn't cast much in the way of spells yet really, and they've got a big full grip of hand, so I think we might have to, hopefully we'll draw just another one and we can just keep forcing them until they run out of counter magic. We can play it around a daze though. Okay, so we can play it around a daze and activate it in one turn. So I think we like this. Like, it's not getting any better. So if they have the Force of Will, it has to go on this. Okay, they're cracking the Misty Rainforest. Okay, so they have a Force of Will. Like, I don't think the spot's getting any better for us. But if we draw another Helm of Obedience, we can win. If we draw a Dark Depths, we can make a 20-20. So we've got some draws that instantly win us the game, and we've also got quite a lot of time because we're only taking 2, so it's like a 7-turn clock really. We can also draw opposition agents or vampire hex mages, which stonewall these guys. Okay, Delver's Secret. This represents a real creature. Interesting that they've kept one of their guys back. Not sure what that is in aid of. So we've drawn an Ancient Tomb. I think we play out the Ancient Tomb just in case we get wasteland and we have more resources when the time comes. Okay, so lightning bolting us. I want to speed up the clock here. I can shut off my Ancient Tombs from making colourless, but I can still tap them for black. So they reveal Brainstorm, which is not great for us because that gives them a lot of looks. 3, 4, 5. So we get one more turn in theory. Obviously, if they have another lightning bolt to the face, we're just dead. So this makes the Dark Depths no longer a good draw because we will die because we can't make enough to block all of their creatures and we're on 1. And we've just drawn a swamp, so we're dead. Alright, that was a bit of a shame. But we did mulligan quite heavily that game, so... Alright, so we've got these Sudden Edicts. And we want to trim one of our Dark Rituals. And we trimmed an Opposition Agent and a Hex Mage. And we can trim one of these. I don't want to keep these in. I think we can trim another Opposition Agent here. So this is our configuration right now. So I'm kind of missing the older build where it had the ability to Pithing Needle Wasteland. Obviously it was a one-of, and you mainly got Urza's Saga, but nevertheless it was quite a potent tool. I think this is fine. The reason we cut one of these instead is because we want to make a Chalice on 1, and if we draw additional Dark Rituals they don't do anything, but if we draw Lotus Petal they do. So I think this configuration should be right. This matchup is generally alright, but obviously they see more cards, so they can fiddle in the margins a bit better than you can. Alright, so we have turn 1 Chalice. I'll keep this. Okay, so I've shut off all of their graveyard and all of their cantrips. So we're in a pretty good position here. We can make a 3-2 that can't be lightning bolted and then start racing. And then we can start making a 20-20 after that. I think we still play this guy out first though. So they can daze this turn, but then they won't be able to cast any spells next turn because they're on less mana. So this is fine. Just ticking along. Okay, so they have the Wasteland. They're just going to immediately fire it off. It's an interesting choice. So have a Volcanic Island. Yeah, there it is. So if we play this out now, I does expose us to Wasteland, but we're already slightly exposed to Wasteland because of the Thespian stage. I think we play it out in case we draw an Urborg, because then we can definitely have 3 mana even if they Wasteland us next turn. So more black mana would be nice. This deck has got like 10 swamps, 2 Lochthwains, 4 Urborgs. Yes, we got Lotus Petals. We got a lot of black sources to draw. So we're gonna get here Expressive Iteration, sure. So this can't find them 2 cards this turn, it only finds them 1. Okay, so we have the removal spell if we need it, but other than that, we're not really doing anything this turn. We're just in a holding pattern because we've suppressed a lot of their cards. Sure, so this one they can actually find a land off of. Okay, so they're playing the Wasteland. And they're hitting the Thespian stage, which is awkward, but we knew this was a possibility. Again, we can't draw lands. Interesting. So we have a win later potentially, but again, we need mana sources. Okay, so they've got rid of our Chalice of the Void, so they can cast 1-drops again. So we have answers to both of their 1-drops in hand. So I think we'd rather get the Chalice down first to make sure they don't follow up with any more 1-drops, so our Sudden Edict stay live. This is an interesting one that they can daze, but they know I have the Chalice, so presumably they'd rather save it and pop it for the Chalice. So I have 2 options here. I can either throw the Sudden Edict out now and leave them able to cast 1-drops, or I can Chalice and see if they can... So they didn't shuffle off the Ponder is the only issue I have here, which means they probably have a counterspell. I think we throw the Chalice and we believe in our deck to draw us a black mana source because it's the most prevalent thing in our deck right now. This is going to get... Okay, I thought this was going to get dazed. So they have to win with what's on board unless they have another Petty Theft. They can make this as a 3-2, so we're going to have to grind through that as well. A 3-1, sorry. But if we don't draw mana, we're going to lose the game anyway. So I think it's better to play the play that is better if we're going to draw mana. It's not the one. So this turn they pretty much double their clock. So we're getting hit for 6-7. This has been quite an unfortunate series of draws here. But sadly, that is what happens when you play decks that don't have blue spells to cantrip. So we were in a situation where we were playing Top Deck Wars where they were looking for their one-off Brazen Borrower and I was looking for any of my lands. So it's a bit ugly. And statistically, it should have been fine, but it doesn't look like it's going to be. Okay, so I have to play this out. Crack it immediately to Sudden Edict, attacking them. There is a choice of holding these back and hoping that I get enough mana to play and activate Helm, but they have 6 cards in hand, so I'm just going to assume that some number of them are counter spells here. So this turn, they're going to hit us for 6. So I think we're just dead now, which is a real pity, because this deck should really just be farming Delver decks all day long, but we had a tough mulligan in game 1, and then game 2 we've not drawn any mana sources after our initial lands. Just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. So they've wastelanded us there. We can play at Dark Depths, but we're dead on the board. Oh, that's a shame. We've lost to one of the matchups we kind of wanted to see, really. But, oh well. 2-1 against Delver still. It took some pretty excessively bad draws for me to lose that round, to be honest. And they had to get pretty lucky drawing their Brazen Borrower when they did without any way of filtering for it apart from the one expressive iteration they cast to find it. Alright, I think we'll go on to the next round and see if we can keep piling on the wins and see if we can play someone that isn't Delver, perhaps. Alright, we're into the 4th round now. Our opponent is a Yorion deck. Our opening hand allows us to play Chalice of the Void for 1 and also Opposition Agent. So I think we keep this one. If they're the sort of the blue Yorion deck, the Opposition Agent is very good. But if they're Death and Taxes, I want to get this in play to stop them playing Aether Vial on turn 1. So it's a tricky one to guess what the right play is here. I think Chalice for 1 is the better play. So I think we're going to go for that. Because we can still make Opposition Agent next turn using a Lotus Petal. So both of these plays are pretty reasonable turn 1 plays. Okay, so they're Death and Taxes by the looks of it. Because it would be a Snow Plains if it was the other deck. So this opposition agent isn't really going to do a lot for us here. But what we can do is we can hold it and maybe flash it in response to a Stoneforge, and that'll be alright. We can go get a Jitte and put it on our opposition agent. Okay, let's have a Wasteland. Thalia. It's kind of annoying. Like, we're not flashing this guy in, so I think we should just make him now. Really hoping I get a Stoneforge with that, but oh well. The Plague Engineers and the Sideboard are going to be very good in this matchup. Okay, so we have this Thespian stage here. We can flash in more opposition agents that don't really do anything, or we can Thespian stage, target the swamp. But our opponent, if they hold up the Wasteland for this, then they're going to be not making a 3-dot this turn, which is where most of their best plays are. Alternatively, they might not know the trick where I can copy a basic and dodge a Wasteland. I think it's alright to just hold it up here. So what this Chalice does do is it protects our Marit Lage token from Swords to Plowshares. But outside of that, it's not spectacular. Spirit of the Labyrinth, that isn't something that I particularly care about. So if I flash an opposition agent here, I'm going to lose my Thespian stage. So I think we hold. Okay, so we have a Dark Depths now. So we can force the Wasteland out if we need to. But at this point, I think we're just trying to draw into a Black Source and Hex Mage so we can overload the Wasteland. Attacking with both of them is interesting to me. I think I can take the 5 this turn, and next turn we might have to opposition agent depending on what they play next. This makes me think that they want to get the opposition agent dead more than they want to keep a Spirit of the Labyrinth. Recruiter of the Guard. Oh, that's not going to work out how they want it to. Oh, it's you may search. Okay, they're just going to choose not to search. Okay. Oh, no, they're going to let me have it. Interesting. So I can get a Recruiter of the Guard, or I can get Skyclave Apparition. Well, I've got a lot of options of things I can get here. They're all quite nice. The only problem is if they Flicker Wisp my guy, it comes back under their control. So I need to be careful about that one. So what is the correct pick here? So Recruiter of the Guard can go and get me Vampire Hex Mage if I want it, which is nice. Then we can get Mother of Runes though. And then we can cast this whilst keeping mana up for our Dark Depths still, which doesn't hurt either. Oh, so it's straight into the old Chalice. What am I doing? What a disaster. So we have an option here. We can trade with the Spirit of the Labyrinth, and if they have a way of tutoring, I can flash in my opposition agent. It means I'm going to lose the ability to Thespian stage is the problem. I think we have to do something here. A Ganjo. Sure. Hexmage. A Dark Ritual. So I have to suck it up for another turn. If I Flicker Wisp our Chalice of the Void, then we can do that. Instead, we're just going to take a boatload this turn. We're just going to be a bit far behind. And I don't know if we can come back in this game, to be honest. Another 4, puts us to 5, so they have lethal on board. We can't go for the thing now. Unless they make this Flicker Wisp play. So they've got this Yorion in hand. If I make the opposition agent, then I give up my Dark Depths. I think we just have to go to our turn. Okay, so you have an Ancient Tomb which taps for black mana because of the Urborg. So we can make 1, 2. So we can make 3 mana here to make an opposition agent, and then we can make 2 mana to make a 20/20. So we're not dead this turn because we could play the opposition agent in our hand and block with it on the 3/1. Okay, so the Caracas is double protection against what we're doing. Black, black, black. So we have to block here. Still can't make our 20/20. Hex Mage. So this keeps us alive. What more can I really ask for? Like, making it 20/20 in the face of Caracas is just not going to do anything here. But it has first strike, so it can trade with the Thalia. But they have lots of cards in hand, so the chance of them having a second Thalia seemed pretty high to me. But I didn't really have a choice because I die if I don't trade using the Hex Mage. Solitude. So this is going to make me gain 2, but I'm going to take 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to be dead. So I'm going to concede. That was not a great show there. The Depths plan against the Death and Taxes deck is not great. So we want some removal spells. Chalice is not fantastic, but it's okay. So we just trim a bunch of the dark depths. That's so bad here. I think we probably just do. Get rid of the dark depths plan and trim these as well. Replace them with a load of removal and plague engineers. The chalice is pretty medium here, to be honest. I think we still keep it to shut off some of their spells though. I think ideally what we want to do in this game is just turn 1 them because they don't really have any interaction with us on turn 0. So let's just submit and maybe mulligan to a turn 1 hand. This is not a turn 1 hand. What does it do? It has a removal spell, it has chalice, it has engineer, plague engineer, like it does some stuff. I think we can keep this. This is a very unexciting hand. So chalices may or may not be dead here, we don't know. But it means they will struggle to remove our plague engineer without solitude though. Okay, so have the vial. That's not great for us. We still play this though. Maybe we should have just mulliganed to see if we can hit the turn 1 hands. Like if we get the plague engineer down, they can't source plowshares, so we'd be quite far ahead then. We might be able to pick up multiple creatures with it. Again, our opponent is a wasteland port deck though, and we've been having a bit of mana issues today. So, and our hand, okay, so they have the Stoneforge Mystic. Sure, Cauldron complete. So we have to kill this now. So because we've missed a land drop, we basically telegraphed that wastelands are going to be great against us right now. So if they have any wastelands, they're quite likely to deploy them. If they have a Stoneforge, they should put it in off the Ether Vial before I can untap, because I might have an opposition agent that I can either that I can get in with another mana source. Another one, or is this going to be a Thalia? Skyclave Apparition. So get rid of my chalice. Interesting. Now if I don't draw a land, I just play another chalice. Okay, so I did draw a land. So I'll play this out. I don't really want to play the Plague Engineer out until I can sweep something up with it as well. So I'm just going to hold back with an opposition agent in case they put a Stoneforge Mystic into play. It's going up to 3. Sure. Okay, so there's a wasteland. Spray the Labyrinth. Sure. So we're going to lose our Thespian stage this turn. But that's fine. We didn't lose our Thespian stage. That's very surprising to me. So these are both spirits. So playing Plague Engineer on Spirit seems pretty good right now. But I could always play the Chalice first to shut off any potential 1-drops. Is that where I want to be? How important is it to... I can take 5 this turn. So we play the Plague Engineer and they have a source to plowshares. That's pretty bad for us. No, I think we play out the Plague Engineer now and go to the races. Like, I think we're behind here. We should have tried to a different approach instead of just these little guys, I think. So they can flash in a 3-drop here, which is not ideal for us. But if we just hold back and never attack, we're never going to get anywhere. I'm not going to risk the Plague Engineer, but I can risk this guy because I've got a bonus one. Okay, they didn't flash anything in. They can always just have like a Skyclave Apparition or whatever anyway, which can just come and eat this guy whenever they want. Flicker Wisp. So they're going to Flicker Wisp away my Plague Engineer. Unfortunate. They're being very patient on their wasteland, especially when I missed a land drop earlier. Okay, they're putting Yori into their hand, so they're going to be able to flicker our board away. So what does this Lotus Petal do? Not a lot. Play it out though. We can play this Chalice for 1. It's probably going to get eaten by the Skyclave, but... Okay, so the only thing they can have for 4 is Palace Jailer, really, which is going to get me anyway. So I should attack into them, especially since we're probably losing some guys in the very near future. Probably should attack my Thespian stage for that instead, because they can't wasteland me off of these. Okay, so they have the Yori on Blink loop now, so we need to draw a Sudden Edict at the right time. Feels like I've lost this game though. Stoneforge Mystic into my onboard opposition agent is interesting to me. Although they just say no to the search. I think we still make this end of turn. So the mana base is much better than the last time I played this deck, but it hasn't always felt that way, which is interesting. Such as playing games where you just have to draw cards. Oh dear. So we can play the Plague Engineer and name Flicker Wisp, like Elemental, which will kill this, but they'll flash in the Yorion, which then will blink these out, and then when they come in, the Skyclave will take out the Plague Engineer, but the Flickerist will still die because they won't have that window. But then I'm taking 4. I think I have to do it, otherwise I die. I think this game is over though. So we name Elemental here. So we get rid of the Flickerist. They can't just loop the Orion, but they can bash us for 4 for 2 turns, which is pretty good, and I can't attack into a 4/5. And they're going to be slowly removing our creatures every turn as well. Well, not necessarily every turn. They need to have either a Caracas or a Flickerist, or a Recruiter of the Guard. Oh, they're just flashing into Solitude. Okay. Getting rid of the Plague Engineer is interesting. So now they can flash all these out, and then when these 2 come in, they can start the trigger, so they kill these, and then they get to search with their Stoneforge. So we are about 98% dead here. Just have to take it. They could have just flashed in their guy, their flying guy, and killed me. I don't really know what we can even draw here. That's certainly not it. I think we are just dead. A very poor performance from the deck there. I think I should have just mulliganed. I had a hand that was okay, and it was pretty good against like the Mother of Runes, Thalia, Recruit of the Guard side of the deck, but it just didn't do anything against the Stoneforge, Skyclave side of the deck really. So I think I probably should have mulliganed that one. Yeah, well, we're on to the last round now. Right, so we're into the last round here, and this is what we've been given to look at as our first hand, and we're on the draw. We do get the turn 0 ley line, but we're looking for Helm or Hexmage or Thespian Stage for this hand to do anything really. So I think we'll mulligan. So our opponent is mulligan to 5 cards, so I think we're going to mulligan again, and we're kind of looking for, we are actually looking for a ley line now, I think. So our opponent is kept on 5. So I'm going to keep my Lane Under the Void. I think that's a given. Since we have the Hex Mage, I don't think we need the Depth, so we can get rid of that one. And I'd rather have a permanent mana source, so we're going to get rid of the Lotus Petal. So we're just going to keep our black sources here. And we'll start with this in play. Because we're on 5 cards, the chance of them being some sort of broken graveyard deck are quite high. They mulligan that much, so this might actually just win us the game for free. Could just be another Delver deck though. In which case this Lane Under the Void, this Chalice of the Void should be pretty good. Mono Void. Okay, maybe they just had a bad hand then. They went to 5, maybe they just got unlucky because it looks like there's some sort of Shark Still type deck because they're just playing Tundras and Brainstorms. Maybe we'll get a bit more information this turn and have a better idea what we're up against. Standstill. Okay, so yes, it is Shark Still. Interesting. So the choices are either to break this immediately or to wait until they have 7 cards in hand and break it, so it only filters for them. Now, depending on what we draw, it depends on which route we want it to take here. I think we can just play out some lands and sit back. So we're basically just trying to naturally draw to our combo anyway, so letting them draw up is also fine by my regards. And if they don't have any more lands, that's also great for us. So we can keep making land drops. So we've got one of our win conditions here. So we just keep going. Obviously, if we can get the Thespian Stage and Dark Depths, we can go in underneath a standstill, and they can't do anything about that without breaking their own standstill. That'd be the dream. Right, there's one of our pieces. Let me play this out now. We can even start manually removing counters if we're so inclined. Okay, so they've got a wasteland there. Just going to burn it off now. They probably should just burn it off now. Yeah, so they're just going to burn off the wasteland now. Just replay one. So ideally what we'd like to try and do is have enough mana maybe to play the Vampire Hexmage plan and the Helm of Obedience plan on the same turn to try and overload their hand, because they're going to be drawing up the standstill when we do that. Alternatively, we can just spend a million turns doing this. I don't really want to do that though. So we have the Urborg, which I don't think is actually going to help our opponent's mana out at all. Let me just play this out. So we can start drawing with Castle Lochthwain if we want, but we have a lot of cards in hand, so we can take a lot of damage doing that. So if we draw a land next turn, we can take 2 counters off a turn, which would be quite funny. So because they're a blue-white deck, they probably have a Swords to Plowshares in hand at this point. So I think if we can make them crack their own standstill somehow, that'd be great. They could just start playing Shark Typhoons, but at the moment they've only got Shark Typhoon for 1. So while they're only 1 land, well, while they're only 3 lands, I think we're doing all right here. Okay, so they've got 4th land. Does that change any of their maths? A Thespian Stage would be a good draw here. Alone on the Void is not a Thespian Stage. I don't think we're in the mood to try and remove double counters, but we can do 1, 2, play a Hex. So go 1, 2, play a Hex Mage, 1, 2, 3, 4, play Helm of Obedience. So we need like another mana source to really do that. If I can get the 30 mana Dark Depths off on stream, that'd be quite fun. Get that on the old YouTube channel. They don't actually get to do anything with this because it's going to go in their exile zone, but it means they can't make a 5/5, so 4/4 from the graveyard. So we're okay. They're just hitting their land drops, which is not really what we want them to do. It's a funny old game. So I can break the standstill if I want. I think this is a reasonable time to do it. I ideally like to do it at instant speed is the only problem. Sure, let's play out this now. I don't think this Dark Depths game is going to work for us. Let's see if we can get this Chalice of the Void going. They're incentivized to counter this with Force of Will because they've got so many cards in hand, they'll probably have to go to discard on their turn. But we can make 2 Vampire Hex Mages this turn, or another Chalice of the Void. Because this can basically be like virtual card advantage. Because if I can shut off all their cantrips, then they may as well. Okay, so I've just 2-for-1 them twice there. Get this one. Put this guy out. Okay, so you've seen a Wasteland, but they are a blue-white deck, so the chance of them having Source of Passion is very high, and I can also just play a second Hex Mage next turn if they do play a Wasteland. Teferi Time Raveler. Sure. So they're forcing me to do it this turn. I might be gaining 20 life this turn. That's what I'm getting the impression of, unless I have another Teferi, in which case they're having to get rid of their old Teferi, so it's not the end of the world. It's going to let me gain 20 life. Okay, I have Prismatic Ending, sure. 20 life is largely irrelevant in this matchup anyway for me. Okay, so we have opposition agents that we can only cast at sorcery speed. I don't think we want to play the Helm until we can play it with the mana to crack it. We kind of want to exhaust all the other resources now, which isn't always easy to do against Standstill, unfortunately. But we need to be able to pressure the Teferi here. Okay, Source to Plowshares. Hex Mage, and then we play out the opposition agent. So we have enough mana to play and crack our Helm of Obedience. This can also take out Teferi. I don't think they can Prismatic Ending my Helm of Obedience because they're a 3-colour deck. Just Wandering Emperor. Okay. So if I get priority, I can remove the Wandering Emperor. They still get to make a They still get to make a guy, which is interesting. I think I can do it in their upkeep. Sure. Because I don't have any, because they can activate the abilities anytime they had, like they could do an instant, so I can activate and then they can just make a guy in response. So it doesn't really matter on the time, as they're always going to get 2/2. But I have to do it before they get another main step, because that's when they can actually leverage it for more. Okay, 5 cards in hand, still quite a lot from our opponent here. I'm in the market for playing out a second Leyline of the Void, so it's harder for them to bounce things out of play and stop my Helm kill. Sure, Narset. What are they going to show us? Prismatic Ending. Sure. That's not too important. We still have 4 other cards though, which is the real issue here. That has Vigilance, so it's going to be coming in. So we can either start drawing. I think right now I'm in the mood to play out the second ley line. So So they're not playing this to use the combo. The Shark Steel decks tend to just have this as a value card. So we're trying to keep our hand empty so we can cast all Lock Thwain, so we can push through the cards in our opponent's hand because they have a lot of cards. I don't really want to trade this for a 2/2 token. It's kind of awkward. We're just shutting off fetch lands. Okay, so we gain 3 life. That's one less card in their hand. So there might come a time where we're just priced into activating our Helm of Obedience. But that time is not yet because we've got a lot of life. So they got a Shark Typhoon in hand as well. So the clock is going to certainly change quite soon. A standstill. Sure. So that's going to be a difficult one to deal with. What is our solution for this? I think we draw now. We can't draw because of... Oh my god, that's such a misplay. Let's just concede on the spot after that. Oh, I'm all flustered. Oh, I'm sorry you had to see that. I don't think it's getting any better. I think we have to go in for this. Yeah, you can have your cards. I assume it's going to force of will it. I haven't seen the force of will yet. The fact they're brainstorming suggests to me they don't actually have it in hand, so maybe we're going to get lucky here. Stroke of luck would be nice today. Oh, yeah, okay, we just managed to win. Okay, after we done a horrible misplay into the Narset of just punching ourselves for 1 life for no reason, we just managed to slip a thing through after all that double standstill and all that nonsense. So what is good against these people? Well, what they really don't want to do is have their hands attacked. So we have these cards, and the Dark Depths plan is less than ideal against them. So I think also the Chalices are less good because they're a prismatic ending deck, so they just have a readily available answer for it. And they're looking to play slightly bigger because they're going, you know, they've got their Shark Typhoons, they've got their Cyclers. They're not even playing on the stack in terms of spells that much, a lot of its abilities. So there's certainly an opportunity to trim on these perhaps. But I think we're just going to trim on the Dark Depths combo here. So you can get rid of a couple of Dark Depths. We want to keep these because we want to just try and turn 1 Court of Ambition them. We want to keep these because they're disruption. We can trim on a couple of Hex Mage. So we've got 3 cards to find. I think all of our other combo is fine here. I think we can trim a Thespian Stage. We're not going to need all of those. And we're looking to cut 2 more cards. I think, what is it we want to cut here? These are all very good for powering out. Maybe we are just cutting all of the Dark Depths plan here and just sideboarding into the Court of Ambition plan. We like the Hex Mages because they can kill Planeswalkers. So there's certainly an option to have a third way of killing Planeswalkers. But I don't want to cut too many lands because I've got 23 lands here and they're all mana producing lands, these ones. So I think this is probably fine and we're going to submit. So this opening hand, it can blank a fetch land if they don't have a Force of Will, but then doesn't do anything else. I think we mulligan. Okay, so this hand has turn 1 Chalice of the Void, and then I can play Dauthi Voidwalker. So I think this is good enough. We have to throw one of these back. I think we're going to throw back the Helm of Obedience for now. Yes, we do have the Voidwalker, but I think this is just going to be more powerful in the immediate time frame that we're working on. Like if we keep that and I'm expecting our Dauthi Voidwalker to get answered. Whereas this is just a better card on its own. Like, yes, they can make little sharks and things which can nip away at us. But if you get this down early enough, it's absolutely backbreaking. Okay, so we drew a Helm anyway, so... Sure. Let's see if we can get this Chalice for 1. I suspect they'll probably just Prismatic Ending it. But if their hand is set up in a way where they don't have the ability to Prismatic End it, then they really have to go in on it now. With a Force of Will or something. Alright. Sure, there's a Prismatic Ending we're expecting. Now I can play another basic. These decks don't run Daze, so they run Counterspell. So playing this means it's either a Force of Will or Bust, really. But they can remove it on their turn, is how they tend to rely on removing the creatures. If I get jealous of blue spells, I can sack this to get the Ponder after this. But I suspect our Dauthi Voidwalker is going to be attacking and then getting killed. Interesting. Have we got the removal spell this turn? They do not. Okay. So play this out. This is a pretty good draw. Another thing that we can pressure them with. So if they play a Teferi, relying on that to deal with what's going on here. The Wandering Emperor, you say? So that's going to minus and exile our guy. Yeah, not much I can do about that. But like I was saying earlier, if they were relying on a Teferi to bounce this, I can flash this in response, and they got 2 threats, so they can't bounce enough to keep the Teferi alive. So maybe we can snag a fetch land here. Currency Converter. It's a pretty good one. This doubles up on their Shark Typhoon to give them extra value off of it. This deck is pretty fun actually, the Shark still. So we're going to flash this in end of turn on the off chance that we can take down this Wandering Emperor. I'm not necessarily expecting this to survive to my attack step. Like if I play this, they're going to kill in response anyway. So we may as well try and get the paying cost. Is this a Shark Typhoon for 1 to save their Emperor? Yes it is. So what they can do here is they can put the Shark Typhoon under and then make a 2-2. So this is pretty bad for us. Also means our Court of Ambition isn't looking so hot right now. Yeah. So they can put this under here. So I've traded for like a third of a card there. Let's see if we can shut off some 1-drops. So they're reasonably okay to play around Chalice because they can just put things through the Currency Converter if they don't like it. It does mean that their Source of Plowshares are shut off, and their cantrips just become draw a card instead and cost 2 mana, which is, you know, it's a bit of a nerf, but it's not really going to matter to them too much. Okay, they've just got the Wear. Interesting. Standstill. So this game is looking very one-sided right now. So we're behind on the standstills in a big way, so we really have to just crack it ourselves and give them some cards and hope that we can play around. Obviously, it depends if we even draw anything we can cast. Jeez. I think we do this, so at least gives us a chance to Helm Obedience if they don't have counter spells. It's bad, but it's the world we're living in. On the draw, on the play, will be a lot better in this matchup. Get out in front of them, start picking apart their hand. Okay, so they got Forcible. So they're coming in for 4 this turn. Punch this out. Shut down some of their options a little bit. And they burnt an important resource on the last one, like Wear Tear is something they could use to blow up ley lines or Helms, so I don't mind them wasting resources on this. Obviously, if they can just do a big Shark Typhoon now, that's just going to be better for them. I'm going to put a lot of damage on the board if they do that. Yeah, okay, and they get the Currency Converter as well. So I get 1 more draw step. Can I draw anything for 1 more draw step that's going to be good enough? I don't think so. I think they just have us here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 this turn. I get 1 more draw step. I don't think I have anything in my deck that does it, so it's going to concede. Right. So this turn, this time, how do we feel about some of these options? Like, I quite like the setup here. The opposition agent is obviously much better on the play if they've got fetch lands, and I can just shut them off turn 1. We can play an early Court of Ambition here. I think we just have to submit like this. I think this is the best we can do. So this is a Chalice, but not a lot else really, so I think we mulligan. So this is Leyline of the Void and turn 1 opposition agent. So I think we keep this. And I think we put back the Dark Ritual or the Lotus Petal. They both do the same thing. I'd rather have a Lotus Petal in my deck than a Dark Ritual, I think. Because if I draw Chalices, I don't really want the Dark Ritual in my deck. And this also saves us 2 points of damage. Give me this in play. So this blocks off their Currency Converter. Play this. I mean, play this out in their upkeep because we can avoid Force of Negation on our Dark Ritual. Sure. Goodbye. So what do they pitch for that one? Sorry. A Shark Typhoon. Sure. So next turn I can opposition agent in their upkeep again. And we're also building towards our Helm combo. They do have white mana, so they might just be able to blow this up. The source to plowshares. And they just have a basic without needing a fetch. It's a little bit of a shame. We can't actually cast him Turek, which is a bit of a pity. Get the bits in here. So we ideally want to cast this him and then follow up with a Helm of Obedience. That's how we plan on winning this game. So they can't stand still just yet because I am ahead on board. But if they remove my guy, then play a standstill, then in pretty good shape. But they didn't remove my guy last turn, so... Chalice. So this time they can make a Shark for 1. A Hull Breacher, but I don't think they run Hull Breacher. I've not seen them in Shark Still lists. So I think we can just crash through for 3 here. And then follow this up with everyone's favourite Chalice of the Void. So they play this turn, so we can have 6. Is it Teferi? Yeah, Teferi. Are they going to bounce the Opposition Agent or the Chalice here? It's going to bounce the Opposition Agent. Sure. Okay, so they had a fetch they wanted to use. There's a lot of resource they put in just to get access to that. So this is probably for a meltdown. So I think we have to play this now, don't we? So yeah, it'd be nice if we could draw some mana. So okay, we don't have any plays on the turn, so we just pass through. Hall of Heliod, that doesn't do anything here, but it does tap for mana. This is Wandering Emperor. Make a 2/2. Timeless Dragon from hand. Interesting. Okay, so we have the Airborg we wanted now. We cast the Hymns Turak, tagging them. What did we hit? Ponder and Wandering Emperor. We don't want to attack into this. So the plan is next turn, possibly to try our Helm of Obedience if we draw a mana source. So they're going to crash in for 5 this turn, unless they have no way of... Okay, so they don't have a way of defending their Teferi, so they don't have a removal spell in hand. So the time of going after Teferi is less of an issue here. Okay, Hex Mage. This will demand an answer because it can kill that Teferi. So I think we play this out. We just want to grind them down so our Helm of Obedience can slip through. Let's remove this. Where's this? 5 mana. Is this a Shark Typhoon? A Prismatic Ending on the Leyline in the Void. Using my own Urborg, which is very rude. They are incentivized just to attack me now, though, is the only problem. But we have a Doughty Voidwalker, which can enable our Helm of Obedience. So that's going to be our new plan. Brainstorm into Chalice. Yeah, I'm just going to come in for 5 this turn. We can come in for 7 next turn if they have a... Okay, what is this? Another Teferi? 4 mana. Prismatic Ending on that guy. Sure, so now they are hellbent. So I play a Doughty Voidwalker and then hopefully next turn just kill them with the combo. Let's cast this guy. The only problem we have now is if we can't cast the Helm of Obedience using our Ancient Tombs, so I think we just play out the Ancient Tomb and we use it as a swamp. So our opponent has 1 turn to find an answer. So we have to go for it this turn. Black, 2, 3, 4. Cast this. Do I draw a removal spell? I'm not sure what removal spell it can be through Chance of the Void. Okay, we got him. I can play any of these cards if I want. So I'm just going to... Okay, so they've conceded. As they should do. Let's go have a look at the deck. So how did this deck perform today? It was good. I got pretty unlucky about that Delver matchup where I went to I smashed Delver a couple of games in a row, and then on the 3rd game versus Delver, I mulled to 5, and then the next game I just didn't hit any lands, which was a bit awkward. And then we sort of in this horrible draw go pattern where they need to find one thing and I need to find any of my lands. And somehow they drew it first, so that was a little bit unfortunate for us. And the Death and Taxes round, I got stomped pretty hard. I don't think I kept great hands, and I didn't play optimally. I thoroughly deserved to lose that round of Magic, so I can't really argue about that. I think I probably should have mulliganed more aggressively in that matchup. I just kind of tanked and went all in on my Plague Engineer against them, which didn't really do anything because they have so many other creatures that can just sort of ignore a -1/-1. So yeah. So how would I think about the direction of decks at the moment? The opposition agent was, you know, it's forced action out of my opponent, that's for sure. But it didn't necessarily feel amazing. It didn't feel like it was the best thing I could be doing. So I'm not sure if we need to have a think about replacing the opposition agents with anything. The mana base, it should have been better, but it wasn't like amazing. I lost games to mana, even though I've got, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've got 10 swamps, 4 Urborgs. So I've got 14 black sources plus Dark Rituals and Lotus Petals. So yes, I am trying to cast some black spells, but you'd think that would be enough, really. I don't think I can cut any more lands for that at the end of the day. I'm running 28 lands. Obviously, the Ancient Tombs and the Thespian Stage aren't giving us colored mana, and Dark Depths doesn't give us any mana. So I don't think I want to tweak the mana base. I think I want to run it back because there's certainly an amount of variance you get where it just doesn't work. So yeah, maybe the opposition agents could try something else in that slot. Maybe some sort of removal spell, whether that's Sudden Edict, or whether we go for something a bit more unusual like Liliana the Last Hope, or something, or Liliana the Veil, which is obviously very good when you're in top deck mode because you can just keep draining your opponent's resources. But the only thing with Liliana the Veil is it doesn't help you pick your spot for the Helm of Beans. You can't keep it in hand and just keep plussing until you're in the right spot for the Helm. So I'm not sure on this slot. I'm going to have a think and see what I land on. If you have any ideas, please just bung them in the comments and let me have a look. I'm not 100% sure where this goes. Like, there is also the option of just playing Sholdred. It's just like another big beefy 4-drop that they have to respect. But again, it's a 4-drop, so my 4-drop slot is pretty chunky. It could also be Black Market Connection, which might be what I'll try next week, because that lets you dig for more cards. It gives you pressure on the board. It can give you more mana, so if you need to try and go up the curve and hit these. So maybe Black Market Connection is somewhere I want to try. I could always try a 2-2 split with opposition agent. The bodies just felt a bit inconsequential in this particular league. As for the sideboard, the Plague Engineer didn't do as much as I wanted against the Death and Taxes, but I still think this is a card I want in my sideboard. It's just so good against elves and things like that. The Court of Ambition, I did put it in, but it didn't come to fruition as a thing I was doing. But I don't think that's a necessary issue with the card. I'm still a big fan. It's just a one card way of winning the game that's quite hard for a lot of decks to remove. So yeah, overall I'm happy with the way that this deck is going. It's going to need a few more iterations before I'm properly happy with it, but I'm enjoying jamming it like once a week for you guys on the old YouTube. Alright, I think that's me done and I'm going to go to bed now. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I really need subscribers, and goodbye.